rest of the results, I'd like to introduce our special guest this evening, Mr. Henry Siwka, Chairman of the Victorian Soccer Federation. Welcome, Henry.
Nice to be here.
Good to have you on the Soccer Show.
Yes, nice to sort of be here after all the events that have been taking place as well.
There's been plenty happening this weekend, and we'll catch up with that in just a moment. We'll just run through the rest of the scores from the Premier League. And the first one, of course, let's look at the top of the table. Box Hill Inter 1, Port Melbourne Sharks 3.
Well, this was a big one, wasn't it, for Port Melbourne? 5 games before the end of the regular season, and that win confirms them as the minor premiers. Sava Ruzmi, the winger, sensational player, best on ground performance. And the interesting one too was Peter Saros, top scorer in the league last year, appearing against his old club today. And the winner, Mean Dean Fack, the skipper of Port Melbourne, took him to the cleaners. Good on you, Dean.
All right, our next game was postponed. St Albans Saints against Springvale City Vales.
Yes, ground unplayable. A critical game, particularly for Springvale. And, of course, that may well be replayed on Wednesday evening. We don't know yet. The Saints have applied to have it replayed on Wednesday night, so watch your local guides for more information, won't you?
Preston Lions continuing their revival. Werribee Bees 1. Preston Lions 2.
Well, game, set and match for the Bees. I think they're stitched up now. Steve Douglas, of course, taking over as coach of Werribee this week. Charlie Egan, one of the former greats of the National Soccer League and a former Socceroo, sacked from the job during the week. Fairly controversial. Steve Douglas coming in as player coach, but they were beaten. The Bees are out of business. I think Preston have just about saved themselves.
Mid-table clash, Albion Red Sox 1, Faulkner Blues 0.
Well, mid-table clash, Albion have climbed now to within 2 points of the top 5. They're actually in 6th place. So for the Red Sox, a terrific result, and a couple of, I mean, really they were let off the hook because Claude Lucchese, the veteran, former gold medal winner, a couple of goal line saves to keep Albion happening with those 3 points, Paul.
Interesting one here, 2 versus 5. Altona Magic 0, Bulleen Lions 1.
All right, the little chef, Peter Diorio, getting the winning goal there. Good on you, chef. He's a terrific little player. Second loss in succession for Altona Magic. They're now without Vasco Tripchevsky for the rest of the year, their top scorer. But the good news for Altona Magic supporters, the Iceman has returned. Iche Kutlasovsky, Iceman we call him. I don't know why, really. And he was on the bench for Altona Magic this afternoon, yesterday afternoon rather. Yes, it was yesterday, thank you. And he'll be a significant contributor, I would think.
And the final game, Doncaster Rovers 1, North Geelong Warriors 1.
On the Saturday game, and really Doncaster Rovers a little bit unlucky not to get 3 points, the bottom side in the league against North Geelong. They dominated the first half particularly, and it finally took an equaliser just 5 minutes. Read it and weep, folks. 5 minutes from full time by David Savinsky to get that point for North Geelong, which keeps them, of course, in the top 5.
And how's the league ladders looking, Bakey?
Very, very well. Thank you for asking. Good. Port Melbourne Sharks on top by a huge margin. 22 points clear at the top of the ladder. Still undefeated, looking for the first ever undefeated season in Premier League history. Sharks, Altona Magic, Sunshine Georgies looking pretty much like the top 3, but Bulleen making the charge. They're 4th. And North Geelong Warriors, of course, in the top 5. Really the only other club in it now, Albion Red Sox in 6th place. And they're followed by Faulkner, Preston, Green Gully, St Albans. Now the 4 clubs will go down, and at this stage the 4 clubs in the gun, in the firing line, looking down the tube, Box Hill Inter, Springvale City, Werribee Bees and Doncaster Rovers, and you wouldn't put Christopher Scase's money on Werribee or Springvale, or rather Doncaster. I'll get it right eventually. Lost the track, don't worry about it, Paul, let's press on.
Thanks, Blakey. Well, of course, the major talking point in soccer in Victoria over the weekend was the meetings that took place in Sydney, which resulted in the next National League season consisting of a 12-team National Soccer League. And Henry Siwka, Chairman of the Victorian Soccer Federation, you were at those meetings. Perhaps we can start with just what were the issues that were voted on and the result of the vote that took place.
Certainly. I wasn't there for the Saturday night. That was only the NSL clubs who met on Saturday night, but I was there for the critical order of business, which was, and I'll read it, which is the agenda of the general meeting, and that was set out by the ASF. And that was to consider and if thought fit to pass the following resolution as an ordinary resolution. That the decision of the Board of Commissioners that the 1995-96 National Soccer League competition would comprise 12 teams be declared as being null and void and not in accordance with the Articles of Association of the Australian Soccer Federation. And that was issued by Ian Holmes, the Chief Executive of the Australian Soccer Federation, basically because there wasn't enough time for another club to support the recommendations put forward, or this particular resolution put forward by one of the constituent members. So the Australian Soccer Federation did that and issued the 14-day mandatory notice for that. It didn't issue a 28-day notice because that needs to be issued for the memorandums and articles to be addressed. This was not an address of the memorandums and articles. It was simply, as I put it, to endorse a resolution that was already passed by the board. And that's what was done. Now, during the course of all of this, there were some changes proposed and not proposed, and everybody had their opportunity to speak on the matter. In the end result, the NSL clubs decided to totally abstain from voting. This was caused mainly by the fact that Brisbane Strikers didn't show to the meeting of the NSL clubs the night previously. They weren't in support of any motion, and so they turned around and were going contrary to the whole thing. The NSL clubs then decided, rather than show any disunity, to go vote en bloc or not vote en bloc, as the case may be, and abstain from voting. This then put the onus back on all the major stakeholders, which is the states, to make the decision. Now, the decision was clear right from the very word go, and it just needed endorsement from the stakeholders. There was never going to be any other decision that could be reached other than to endorse the board's decision. And so the final figures were, I think, 45-0.
What I don't understand, Henry, is why the voting of the clubs like Parramatta and Heidelberg and Zip, why didn't they vote against the motion, obviously, if they're so adamant about staying in the league?
Well, there's a bit of anathema about all of this sort of carry-on that was going on between the National Soccer League clubs. I think they understood that they really didn't have a leg to stand on. There are a number of areas that constitute all of this, and it's all contained within the articles number 88, and there's about 5 different points there. The biggest problem that I think we will find is that most people in the Australian Soccer Federation don't even know what the memorandums and articles are. They haven't read the Constitution. They only refer to it when they're in trouble. And that's really where it all stems.
Having said that, Henry, if you don't mind me breaking, is that they are fairly vague. There's a couple of things we really have to touch on with this. This is going to be a huge debate, folks. What we might do is take this sponsors break and come back.
Where do you go for the finest authentic Indian